This is the OTB Television Network, a service of Capital District Off-Track Betting.
Good morning and welcome to Loose on the Lead. Seth Merrow from Equidaily.com, Steve Beck from Sirius and XM's At the Races. And Steve, I mentioned you were sitting off set while we did the handicapper support. Little thoughts on Corey Bant this afternoon in the finale?
You know, these 12,000 claimers, they're basically $25,000 claimers populated by, good horses that are dropping down. I'll tell you what, though, if the racetrack is going to play like it did yesterday, where speed just absolutely reigned. I mean, everybody that was moving on the inside, it was a conveyor belt. I'm all for that. Let's keep it like that for 9 races today because he's putting the blinkers on. And Sammy Camacho gets back on him. Sammy rode him to his win. He's kind of alternating. If you look at his buyers, he's alternating efforts. He's due for a good start. And if he breaks on top and the track is glib, why not?
Go, baby, go.
He'll be 50 to 1.
We're rooting for the speed. Over the past week, well, let's touch on one thing I talked about on your radio show because the news had essentially just come out on Wednesday, the passing of Tommy Voss, who certainly, I said the other day on the show up here at Saratoga, he was notable to us because obviously he was a big steeplechase guy. And if folks are just getting into the game, there's only a limited number of steeplechase races up here at Saratoga, but for years there were more than that. Tommy Voss certainly made a name over on the steeplechase side, but he had plenty of good runners too on the flats. And at Saratoga every year, you could look for at least 1 or 2 that would make that move from the jump to the flats and have some nice inflated odds and get it done. But Tommy Voss will be missed. He was too young to go.
Wow, and the subsequent pieces of news are really upsetting because he had been complaining going back to last summer, and maybe this is a lesson for everybody. 63 years old, and granted, Tom probably packed away, 4 packs of cigarettes a day, but he had a pain in his leg, and he was complaining about it to his wife for months, and he wouldn't go to the doctor. And this was a blood clot that was forming and ended up traveling and kills him. And this was clearly preventable. That's the really upsetting part.
Yeah.
Tom Voss was a fascinating guy, and we had I hope you listened to the show this week. We had an hour tribute to him that included Bill Gallo, Tom Skiffington, Patty Young, and Todd Wyatt. Wyatt worked for him for 15 years, lives right on the farm in Moncton, and basically owes a lot of his horsemanship skills and career to Tom Voss. Patty Young, of course, and his wife Leslie together have a small operation. Patty Young rode Slipaway to a championship in 2010. Tom Skiffington needs no introduction, rode for Voss and trained against him. And, of course, Bill Gallo from NSA and the entire industry of all ilk, flat, steeplechase, equestrians that ride point to point, and foxhounds. Just everybody admired him, and this is a terrible loss. I mean, funny and acerbic and self-effacing and just an infectious guy. I thought he was bigger than life, and he was one of my favorite people to have on the show. We'll all miss Tom Voss tremendously.
And of course, with John's Call, the big name, and Slipaway.
He had tons of horses that he always first that he sent out to tremendous success near the end of his career. In fact, won the John's Call with Always First at 22 to 1. That was great. Robbie Alvarado aboard. They had also won at Kentucky Downs and Churchill, and this was sad. Really sad. Funeral tomorrow in Moncton.
And on a lighter note, we talked a little bit about it last week, but the Esquire Network, which is a brand new network that fired up September, October,
late last summer,
and has been noted for picking up viewers, aiming at a younger audience. But they premiered the Horse Players reality show this past Tuesday night. I missed it on Tuesday, but it's now available online. I have a link over on Equidaily, so you can pick it up. I saw it. I was pretty happy with it. It's entertaining. I'm kind of getting tired of that reality format template they go to. Action, 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 3 B-roll shots of raking, sunset, whatever, action, action, action. And I had one qualm that has been mentioned by virtually everybody. That deal where they put in Groupie Doll at 20-1 was just, they made it up out of whole cloth. I mean, obviously these reality shows, they edit, and I think some things are maybe staged a little bit, but you still think there's some reality. But that, they just totally, Groupie Doll was the favorite in that race, and they put 20-1 on the screen just to add a little drama to it, which I think was unnecessary.
May have been. There also may have been some. There's a few little technical glitches. The thing with the Trevor Denman, that they didn't have the Trevor Denman calls. I understand that was just a hiccup, and that that'll be fixed later on. Some people complained about it. To me, it was superfluous, and it didn't take away from people who really know racing inside. Okay, we're gonna pick out the little nits and gnats, but overall, it was kind of fun, and it was nicely done. And there's little things if you're close to the game. For instance, the scene with John Conti at Morning Line at Belmont, the track kitchen, that I got a big kick out of that, because there in the track kitchen is Winston Hislop. Yeah, man, Winston is hanging around in the track kitchen. That, to me, that was an absolute delight. You're going to see people that from around the game. Of course, Winston is an off-again, on-again jock agent who is just a tremendous character. He would have been a good fit. They're going to continue to introduce the players that are involved, the ones that they followed most closely, and it is noteworthy that really none of the principles that are being followed. They didn't do badly these last 2 days at the NHC, and the championship today is, of course, the final table. They took the top 50, they culled them, and they'll have a chance today to finish. And Juan Arias from Los Angeles goes in with a pretty sizable lead, and he's been in front from early on Friday. But none of the major players, Christian Helmers, John Conti, Team Rotundo, Kevin Cox, all of those players, nobody, I don't think, made the top 50.
Not that I saw.
Yeah,
I think.
But it's fun, and if you haven't seen it, not only can you see it online, it's also on demand. If you go to channel 1003 on your Time Warner dial, it's 1:14 on Tuesday nights, but then you can see it on demand through the Time Warner on demand service system. That's how I watched it.
Yeah, like I say, it was fun. That 20-1, they just made it up. That bugged me that they just totally made something up. But again, maybe that could be a little bit of a nitpick. Again, going back to speaking of horse players, going back to the tournament, I just want to bring up a local guy doing very well from Schenectady, Michael Piccola, sitting number 4. And the format is they played open the first couple of days, winnowed it down to 50 players who will play early today to get it down to 10 players at the end of the day. So to be up there, number 4, Michael Piccola from Schenectady got in one of the online contests, and a lot of online winners I'm noting here in the top 50. The vast majority played online. So I'll mention Michael Piccola, and I just want to also mention one other name making the top 50, our buddy Gary Johnson. If you watch Racing Across America, he's on with us every Tuesday, number 49, so he makes it to the last day.
Well, and you mentioned the online qualification. Part of that is because the system this year enabled players to win 2 entries. And so in addition to those that go around to the various on-site tournaments, there was people qualifying for a second entry. And a lot of them probably did it at nhc.qualify.com. And of course, this year, when you join the tour, there's going to be a lot more at Racing Form. They've tied on with bcqualify.com and nhcqualify.com. And noteworthy the way the tournament seems to be, kind of boiling over and getting, I think, even more critical mass for the horse players. And one other horse player note that I should mention: there was a bittersweet aspect to watching some of the footage, and that included Ramon Dominguez winning several different races during the sequences, and then including the Breeders' Cup Turf from 2012. Here was Little Mike winning with Ramon, and stalking and coming late is St. Nicholas Abbey. And it just kind of, I mentioned on Wednesday or Thursday, the fleeting nature and the perilous nature of this sport. the fact that here it is a little bit more than a year later, say Nicholas Abbey's dead and Ramon Dominguez, lucky he's not dead and retired. So it really, there's some, I thought, some very poignant elements to this if you understand the game. And I think the thing is going to be a winner across all walks of racing life, inexperienced and experienced alike.
And that ties in to talking about the tenuous nature of the equine and human athletes. Ties in a little bit. Shared Belief missed his workout last week, rescheduled and then rescheduled again. Missed. Jerry Hollendorfer not wanting to answer too many questions. I think there is, as Steve Haskins said in his recent column, a little stress when you have somebody a contender on the Derby trail. I've said all this week as this was playing out, you can't get a straw of hay in your path on the Derby trail because you have that date on the calendar you have to make. And so you really can't get a ding and get set back. Now, this is early enough. They still may be able to juggle things up, but it's certainly not good news for the Shared Belief camp.
I agree. And Jerry Hollendorfer may be a little bit more tight-lipped than usual in this particular case. Jerry can be a little on the prickly side when it comes to to dealing with the media. But I think a part of it is that he feels very snake-bit when it comes to the male equation on sophomore racing. He's had, 3 winners of the Kentucky Oaks? And yet, when it comes to the boys' side, he's had nothing but bad luck. We could bring this up later with Steve Haskin when he joins us. So it could be, especially with the celebrity nature of this horse, it could be that he's a little bit more anxious. And, I wouldn't have minded, I don't think, or I wouldn't have thought that it was that big a deal early on when this started to, become an issue. But the first inkling that there was a problem was when there was a lack of distinction being made between what was wrong with him. Because first they said, he grabbed a quarter, galloping the other day. And then it came, it's a quarter crack. And then nobody clarified that for about 10 days. And I got to say, that is not a positive sign. And granted, as Jay Privman said Friday with me on the radio, let's not panic here. The horse is dead fit from the 2-year-old campaign. He obviously ran as late as December in the Hollywood Futurity, but you're starting to get a little antsy when you start missing your target, in this case, the Bob Lewis. Meanwhile, there's all kinds of West Coast 3-year-olds that are emerging simultaneously, not the least of which was California Chrome yesterday, who trounced that Cal Cup Derby. If you didn't see this, we'll talk to John White in our 4th segment today. John, of course, will be here as well to talk about that $431,000 double carryover with a bunch of prices in the sequence yesterday that tripped the carryover into an additional day. Kent DeSormo out there in California, shaking it up.
Yeah, had one of those crazy winners.
Look at you.
And talking also tenuous on the human and equine side, equine Shared Belief. Also want to mention it earlier on the Handicappers Report. Matt Rispoli came out of that spill on Monday. It looked like things were going to turn out okay for the 5 jockeys. A couple of spills for the 5 jockeys wound up walking away. But Rispoli went to the hospital, took a few days to get a follow-up on that. But he was fairly seriously injured. Concussion, broken tibia, 4 fractures to his face. But the broken tibia stands a chance of ending his career, depending on how they have to stabilize it, with whether a rod or whatnot, because it could wind up affecting the way his leg acts and essentially put an end to the riding career. So we'll keep our eyes on that and keep our fingers crossed for Matt Rispoli. Also wanted to mention, we've talked about it the last couple of weeks, but I did want to touch on it because it's something you're going to want to watch this week. That Illinois situation comes to a head this week. The last chance for the legislature to act on this legislation that will allow the full calendar of racing comes up on Wednesday. It comes up on Wednesday because the legislators meet in Illinois for the State of the State address. However, there was an article in the Daily Herald from Mike Riopel, who I've had on the show before. He covers the State House up there, and he says lawmakers are set to meet only on Wednesday next week, the same day as the State of the State address. And he describes it as a pomp-laden day, typically consumed by post-game criticisms and followed by a race to get out of Springfield and back home. So it is a very tenuous situation coming up on Wednesday. where it's just going to come down to the clock, and will the legislators stick around to vote on this? If they don't, that Illinois calendar is going to completely fall apart for the 2014 season. And of course, Illinois is an important a cog in the American racing scene with Arlington Million and whatnot. So certainly this is something we'll have to watch on Wednesday and keep our fingers crossed that they all sit down after the state address and put this up to a vote.
Well, and in addition, of course, to the racing calendar, and we're all concerned on that front, but frankly, the racing calendar, if things should fall apart, to be honest, Indiana, Ohio, and Iowa will be poised to pick up the slack from anything that goes wrong in Illinois, at least on the thoroughbred side. I can't speak to the standardbred side as much. However, much bigger is the entire state of Illinois. The ADW volume is tied to this. And if it isn't rectified, people in Illinois, as they were last year, will be shut out again from being able to bet online. And this is just preposterous. It continues to amaze.
Yeah, and again, it is a very tenuous situation. We'll keep our eyes open there. I just want to bring up one thing quickly because it's kind of fun. Go back to an article Marty McGee wrote in the Racing Forum on New Year's Day. It profiled a little bit trainer Kim Hammonds, who I have to admit before I read this article, completely floated under my radar. I think she's a work-a-day kind of a trainer that when you look at a specific circuit, she has statistics that are probably just in that work-a-day kind of category, but she's in a very notable position. As she was profiled in this article a few weeks ago, she is on the verge of becoming the first female trainer to win 2,000 races in North America, and I bring it up because she has a starter today. She must have a limited stable because I'm kind of keeping an eye on this, and she doesn't start too many horses, or hasn't so far in January, but at Turfway Park today, race number 3, she has a horse named Miss Bulldog. She's at 1,999 winners. She is on the verge. So that third race at Turfway today, keep your eyes on Miss Bulldog.
We're going to have Steve Haskin join us next. We'll get a lot of three-year-old conversation. And, of course, yesterday at Gulfstream, we'll talk to Mike Welch at the bottom of the hour as well and get Mike's take. But we can talk about the Cairo Prince performance that was exceptional, as was Top Billing, winning the allowance for Shug McGahee and Bill Farish. We'll also talk to Steve about some of the other notable three-year-old performances you may have missed yesterday at Laurel, the Miracle Wood. An extra sexy hipster for Mike Trombetta, the last Miracle Wood winner he had, Sweet Northern Saint. And I think it looks like this one may be okay, a 92 buyer for extra sexy
Beats the hipster horse I've been paying attention to, Joint Custody, who I think is very talented.
Jerry Robb, who we do like, and also the Germaniac and the Tim Tulox. Nice good racing yesterday at Laurel, including our man Tony Black. At the age of 62, wins a race. We'll watch the stretch run in a little bit. Tony Black, 62 years old, goes down to Laurel, wins the What a Summer, which was a filly he rode during her career, and he wins for Mike Arrow on the very nice Winning Image, herself a 7-year-old mare. Tony Black has won a race in 45 straight calendar years. Think about that. Back after this, Steve Haskin of the Blood Horse joins us on Loose on the Lead. This is Steve Beck. Join me Tuesday through Saturday here on OTB TV for At the Races, my Sirius XM daily news magazine of the thoroughbred industry. Handicapping, interviews, analysis, everything you could want. 6 a.m. OTB TV.
Go Zephyr kicking clear, and Go Zephyr is pulling away impressively.
Hysterical Lady, Ginger Punch to win it.
And it's Wilco in front, and he's going to pull off a huge upset here.
But it's Round Pond going on to take the distaff.
Awesome again. Star of 10 Grade 1 winners, 4 Breeders' Cup champions, and 4 multimillionaires, standing at Adena Springs.
It's more than just a sports bar. It's Stadium Cafe. Located at 389 Broadway in Saratoga, it's the place to be for great times and great food. Their menu features everything from gourmet entrees to your favorite wraps and sandwiches. Or maybe you just want to grab a beer and catch the game. So what can be better than that? How about 2 Stadium Cafes? there's also the Westside Stadium, right up the road at 112 Congress Street. Same great menu, same great service. Whether you're hanging at the bar or just relaxing outside on their spacious covered patio, you'll always leave knowing you'll be back again.
We love, above all, the staff. We love Dave Harmon, and the food is fantastic.
Not one, but two. 112 Congress Street, 389 Broadway. Guaranteed to be a home run.
Missed one of our TV shows? No worries. Now you can catch all your favorite programs online. Simply log on to CapitalOTV.com and click on the YouTube link at the bottom of the homepage. And look for our new podcast coming soon. CapitalOTV.com. Log on today.
Then we go to top billing, and then we go.
Welcome back to Loose on the Lead for this Sunday morning. Happy to be joined now by Steve Haskin from the Blood Horse. Good morning, Steve.
Good morning. How are you?
Very good. And I read your recent column, which seems to be a prelude to the upcoming Derby list. You talked about Derby stretch, and as noted at the end of the column, Derby stress leads into your Derby list. When does your first Derby list of the year come out?
It will be out Monday, which is tomorrow at some point. If it's not tomorrow, it'll be early Tuesday, but most likely at some point tomorrow. Compiling it right now, tearing my brains out as usual, trying to figure out who deserves to be where. But that's life on the Derby Dozen.
And of course, the Derby Dozen, Steve, an institution that was handed to you by Joe Hirsch. And we look forward, of course, to this list. And you've been, as Seth mentions, stressing over, the whittling down. And of course, this weekend, and even if we go back to last weekend, last Sunday, we had a little bit of turf action with the Kitten's Joy storming Indy in a thriller. We had the Smarty Jones on Monday, Tanzanite Cat, and then that all led to yesterday at Gulfstream, particularly with Cairo Prince and some very good horses chasing him home. We also saw top billing earlier in the day. We're going to kind of walk through those here with you. Let's go back, in fact, and look at a grass race and talk about Storming Indy and We Love Artie.
Well, this was actually, a pretty good race for early in the year. I don't know where it's going to stand as far as a major Derby prep, but I think both those horses certainly look like they can move forward. We missed Artie. Obviously, we know more about from last year. But, you have to listen. Nowadays on a Derby trail, you have to take into consideration every race, whether it's on the grass or whether it's on synthetic or no matter what track it's run at, because you never know where a Derby winner is going to come from. We've had Derby winners come from Sunland Park and from Turfway Park and all around the country, so one never knows.
That's for sure. And of course, one piece of the trail when it comes to the Derby lead up through Arkansas at Oaklawn, between the series of good performances we've had from Arkansas Derby winners and even horses that didn't win. We look at the Smarty Jones. This is Tanzanite Cat, and there's a pretty neat story going on down there. Cody Autry off to a great start at the meet, as is Norberto Arroyo Jr., kind of rooting for him. Here's the Smarty Jones finish, and Tanzanite Cat, obviously feels like a B player right now, but this was a nice performance stretching out.
Yeah, I don't know what he beat. The big favorite in there was Coastline, who ran a good even race, and he's a nice horse. But right now the Oaklawn horses we don't know about. You can't knock Tanzanite Cat. He's won 2 in a row. I don't know how far he wants to go by Graham Hall out of a Mount Livermore mare. I do love the name Cody Autry. I gotta tell you, if anybody should be associated with horses, it's somebody whose name combines Gene Autry and Buffalo Bill.
Also notable in that race, though, was the horse that ran second, Walt, who came out of that Springboard Mile at Remington, which of course produced Will Take Charge last year. Walt finished 4th, so I think we still have now to look forward to the runners that ran 1st, 2nd, and 3rd, and particularly that horse that ran 2nd in that Remington Springboard Mile, Noble Cornerstone.
Yeah, for sure. I actually like Noble Cornerstone. I'm looking forward to his first start back. The Springboard Mile, listen, the funny thing is, you look at the Springboard Mile and you look at races like the Smarty Jones, Will Take Charge came out of both of those races.
That's right. That's right.
So, but I mean, Noble Cornerstone, he could be any kind. I really liked his race. He was closing really well in there, and I thought Louis Flower looked good. And Walt actually ran a good race after winning his first 2 starts very impressively. So, if they can make the transition from Retama, into the big time, then fine. I don't know about his pedigree, his sires by City Zip. So you don't know how far he wants to go, or what his class factor is. But as of now, I mean, he's certainly moving in the right direction.
Steve, you talked about Coastline there running an even race. We can also turn and convey that into the same connections. Cassie and Oxley, or not Oxley, actually, Conquest Stables. Here's Mark Cassie, though, with the very nice performance from Conquest Titan, who you've been touting heavily. Mm-hmm. We knew what to expect from Cairo Prince, and he absolutely delivers here, the pioneer of the Nile Sun for Kieran McLaughlin, the Ridgeling. But Intense Holiday third, Conquest Titan second. We're going to watch the stretch run here of yesterday's performance in the Holy Bull, and this was expected to be a good prep, and that's exactly what was delivered.
Yeah, I'm listening. One thing Cairo Prince had for him, had in his favor, is the fact that he had really shown his class, and he ran against some really good horses in the Remsen. Doesn't have the greatest action. I like to see them reach out a little bit more, show a little bit more extension. But he's very professional. If you watch the race head on, he ran straight as an arrow down the stretch to what you want to see, and he opened up. I mean, I think the race. I think it was a perfect trip. Unlike Conquest Titan, who had to come from way out of it. And the thing I like about this horse is that, to show his adaptability, this horse used to be a speed-crazy horse, which is not the way Mark Cassie wanted him to run. And finally, he just said, you know what, forget about this. We're gonna just take him back at the start, and that's what they did in that allowance race, and that's why I loved that last allowance race, the acceleration he showed. And in this race, if you watch him, I mean, he really wasn't even set down until they came close to the quarter pole and then had a circle 5 wide. And I love the way he was motoring down the middle of the track. And this horse is only going to get better. He's got the pedigree to run forever. So, I mean, you take into consideration Cairo Prince moving forward, Conquest Titan moving forward, and Intense Holiday. This horse gets better with every start. He also ran well in the Remsen. If you watch, he was showing good acceleration in the stretch. And remember, that was a race where they went 117 and 2 for the first 3 quarters and flew home the last 2 8s and 11 and change, each 8. And he was closing into it. He actually closed faster than anybody in that field. So, I mean, he's a horse that, talent-wise, I don't know how he stacks up, but he is getting better with every start. And again, he's another horse who's bred to go on. And if you look at all 3 of these horses, by the way, and I wrote a whole column about how so many of these 3-year-olds trace to Fabiano, especially in the sire side, and through his son Unbridled. Well, Cairo Prince does through Pioneer of the Nile, and Conquest Titan does, and Intense Holiday does. I mean, everything you see right now is either tracing to Fabiano through Unbridled or to AP Indy. Especially through Tappet, who Tappet also traced to Fabiano. So pedigree-wise, I like the fact that the top half dozen horses or so this year all look like they want to go on. You don't have any of these, Uncle Mo types or Shanghai Bobby types where you really don't know because they've been so brilliant. All these horses look like they really want 1.25 miles, which you like to see this time of the year.
Well, and I suppose we also should mention as part of this, before we watch Top Billing's performance, we should mention, this was a very serious pace, and Cairo Prince was attending it, and he finished. Now, you look here, and there's a few horses that absolutely tired badly in here, none worse than Coup de Gras, who was just flat-out bad. Mr. Speaker...
Well, he had to take up pretty good at the 5/16 pole, and they shut him right off the rail. Now, granted, didn't look like he was going anywhere at that point, but he wouldn't have finished as badly as he did because he really did have to take up. What happened to Wicked Strong? I have no clue. I thought he was in perfect position. He ran. I'm not saying because I have no clue, but he ran like a horse who might have bled or displaced. I don't know. Only time will tell on that. But he just ran too bad. Especially the fact that all these Remsen horses are running so well, and he just stopped on a dime.
Well, and given the fact that the pace, did collapse and it did allow Conquest Titan and Intense Holiday to close the way they did, you do have to note that Almost Famous was right up on the lead and right on the pace every step. That was a very good performance, sneaky good for Pat Byrne. I'm sure he's not unhappy at all for the next step. The other horse, I got to mention, Mr. Speaker, I don't think it was a question of him not caring for the dirt. We'll take this up later with Mike Welsh, but I think Mr. Speaker tired in here more than anything else.
I did too. I mean, he looked like he was in perfect position. There's no reason why he shouldn't handle the dirt. I mean, he's actually bred for the dirt a lot more than he is for the grass. So I don't know why he tied. Maybe, listen, we don't know. We're basing everything on the Dania Beach, so we really don't know whether Shug's going to give him one more shot or give up and go back to the grass. There really isn't that much to run on the grass. I would probably give him one more shot, but he really just didn't show much at all. I mean, there was just nothing there when the real running came.
Steve, we're going to now take a look at Top Billing, who did an orb impression, dawdling again at the start, falling back about 8-9 lengths, and then just with ease, inhaling the field and drawing off very comfortably, gets a 90 buyer in this effort and sets the stage for the next step for him and for Shug. And we're watching on the turn. That's him on the far outside. And this was very impressive. Visually, I like the splits, the way he came home as well in here, came home a little faster, in fact, than did Cairo Prince, but that is to be a little bit expected with the slower opening quarter. What was your impression of Top Billing?
I love this horse. I mean, I already had him in my Derby dozen, like down towards the bottom. Now, I'm debating whether to put him number 1 or 2. That's how impressed I was. I might lean towards Cairo Prince because he has the class factor going for him, but from a visual standpoint, this horse is as impressive a horse as I've seen all year. From his last start, even though he was second, he had everything against him in that race. He was coming off 1 6-furlong race in a slop at Laurel, running up against a horse who had at 1 1/8, who had already won at 1 1/8 in Commissioner. And he had a bad trip. He was squeezed twice by the winner, and he still was only beaten a half a length. I loved the way he was running on in the final yards of that race. And this race, too. I mean, as I write in my comment, he's one of the horses this year, maybe the only horse, that I cannot find a single fault in this horse. He's got the pedigree. He's got the running style. He's got the stride. Just watching him cut the corner, turning for home. So he's got the athleticism. Shug probably didn't want him quite that far back, but listen, Shug can't complain anymore about horses being that far back. I mean, if you can come back as far back as Orb came in last year's Derby, I wouldn't worry about it too much. Let's put it that way. But what I like about this horse is that when you ask him to go, he goes. He's got an incredible move on him, and he just keeps getting better and better. I really like this horse, and you certainly cannot knock his pedigree.
No, it's
going
to be
fun.
fun.
Out of an AP Indy mare, and I mean, he's got everything going for him. I think, between him and Honor Code, I think Shug's sitting in a pretty good position. But I like this horse. He right now, he's probably going to wind up as a number 2 horse on my Derby dozen.
I agree. Don't put that Sports Illustrated cover onus on him just yet. Steve, we got one more video to see, and I'm assuming that you watched the Miracle Wood yesterday. And here it is, Sweet Northern's extra sexy hipster, Mike Trombetta. It looks like he's got himself another very nice 3-year-old.
Yeah, this horse is really well. I mean, I love the way this horse drew off in the stretch from those horses. I mean, I thought he was very impressive. I'd like to know where the Z comes from in the name, but I mean, it is kind of an unusual type of name.
Well, it's the one of the owners. One of the owners' name is HIP, HIPP, and I think that's what it is. It's a play off that.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, I know about the hip. I don't know where the Z comes from. Where the hip, the ZS. Anyway, that's immaterial. But no, I think Trombetta's got himself a really, really nice horse. And again, I like the way he laid off the pace and the way he opened up with ease. And I think he beat a really, really nice horse too in joint custody. So, for this early in the year, but these are probably a couple of the best horses coming out of Maryland I've seen in several years. But Extra Sexy Hipster, you know, listen, you know, he's by a son of Pulpit. You know, his dam is by Freud. You know, how far he wants to go, I don't know, but can't knock his races. When he wins big. He's won 3 races, you know, all by 3.5 and farther. And when he won to Don Rickles, he got a 93 buyer. I don't know what he got in this race, but it should be pretty good. I mean, you run 136 and change at Laurel. I mean, that's running. I mean, they only closed from like 13-1, but still, I mean, that was, you know, he was handwritten to the wire. Wasn't asked for anything, you know, by Pimentel, and I think he's got a nice future.
92 buyer for Extra Sexy
Okay, that's
Zipster.
good.
Not bad at all. And of course, there's some other spots here and there, Steve. We'll save them. We're looking forward to tomorrow's release of the Derby Dozen, the first of the year. The good news is there's good 3-year-olds emerging all over the country. Oaklawn Fairgrounds, Florida, New York, Laurel, everywhere. And it'll start to get serious here over the coming weeks.
Yeah, listen, we even had a nice Calbred win the
California Crown.
The 2 horses that ran 1-2 in that race looked like really nice horses. So again, you don't know where they're going to come from.
And we know where to go, though, when we want to talk 3-year-olds. Steve Haskin, of course, follow him at Twitter under Steve Haskin, and every day at Blood Horse, the inimitable and enjoyable Steve Haskin. Thanks, as always.
Thanks, Steve. Take care.
Thanks, Steve. And I think we will do that. Rather than take a break, we will keep the conversation going, and we're going to talk about Gulfstream and everything that went on this first really big Saturday with the Open Company horses. Mike Welch and he and his partner Mike Vesey with a spectacular day for the DRF Clocker Report. That is first and foremost. Mike, great work yesterday.
Yeah, I got to give a lot of credit to Mike Vesey up there. Most of those horses were coming out of Palmettos, especially in the big race, and he was right on there. You know, Cairo Prince, he gave an A-, which we don't give too many of those to, and good grades on the horses that finished second and third as well. So tip my hat to him for that race especially, but we did have some other good stuff scattered around the day too. So I hope our customers are happy, and we'll come back again next week.
Well, and in fact, Mike, we're going to watch, we'll pull up Cairo Prince again here. And one of the things that we talked about in recent weeks is not just a glowing report on horses, to make sure that you include them and use them. There's also these little nuanced comments that trained eyes like yours and your partner, Mike Vesey's, that you guys see. And I thought that Vesey's comment about Wicked Strong working with his head cocked, that is never a good sign. There was also his comment about the other Centennial horse for Jerkins, Juma, getting out in late stages of works. These are little nuanced negatives that help you sort of ratchet a horse down in terms of your play and the way you structure tickets. And I think that that's as important as the glowing recommendations.
Right. The negative reports are just as good as the positive ones in a lot of cases, especially with a horse that got bet like he did yesterday, Wicked Strong. And, just from a handicapping sense, you had to like him in there coming off the Remsen, making up a little ground into that very, very slow pace. But, that was just enough of a negative comment for me to not include him in my picks. And, again, tip my hat to Mike for picking that up. Not every clocker would do that. So it worked out well. And, they don't always run like they work, going either way. But when they do, it makes you feel good, and you just hope your followers followed along in that instance and were rewarded.
Mike, I got to ask about a couple of performances within the chart, and certainly Conquest Titan and Intense Holiday got themselves a big pace to close into. Got to be impressed, I think, with the way Pat Burns, Almost Famous, comes into the season, because he attended the pace much like Cairo Prince did. In fact, was up on the pace, even inherited the lead turning for home, and he stayed on okay. That's a performance to build on.
Yeah, no, I made that comment back here in the press room afterward. I didn't realize that Almost Famous had finished fourth, actually, watching the race where I was watching it from, kind of knew Cairo Prince had won and was watching the battle for second money. And it was several lengths back to the fourth place finisher. But for him to hold on like that, I thought that was a very good effort on his part. And, he did miss a few weeks workout time and did miss a scheduled start, or at least a start that they had thought about making in the Gulfstream Park Derby. So, yeah, I agree with you. That is a big effort to build on as we head down the road. Whether he'll come back, against these same kind and even tougher in the Fountain of Youth, or look for maybe a little easier spot next time to grab some points, remains to be seen. But it was a good effort, and like I said, we all commented on that right after the race.
It also seemed, if we're going to look at some other important horses, it seemed to me that Mr. Speaker didn't so much not like the dirt as he got a little tired.
Yeah, that was the only surprise, or the real surprising thing to me watching the early part of the race. I mean, it kind of broke like I thought it would, with Coup de Grace and Almost Famous up front. I expected Cairo Prince to be sitting third, not fourth, outside Mr. Speaker. I was really surprised to see Mr. Speaker up that close. I thought when he was sitting in that position, he was going to be very dangerous in there, but, not to be. And we'll see what happens with Shug if he decides to now just abandon any Derby plans and just go back onto the grass with him, which, may still be his best game, but it'll take one more shot down the road with him.
We're going to talk about the girls' race, Mike, before we talk about Top Billing. And in the Forward Gal, I think we've seen this movie before. Todd Pletcher and a 3-year-old filly just devouring the Gulfstream Stakes program for 3-year-olds.
Well, that's 3 in a row in the Forward Gal for Todd. And, it was a pretty easy victory once she made the lead like that. Actually, Todd thought Resistivity would be in front. He'd be chasing her, but once she outbroke Resistivity and got to the lead, I mean, it was pretty much all over. But real good effort by Aurelia's Bell, and she was coming off a nice B-plus workout here at Gulfstream. No match for the winner, but she ran a little greenly. She didn't change leads down the stretch, and that cost her any chance to win the race, but she did well to finish second. As a matter of fact, I ran into Wayne Catalano right after the race, and he was very happy. He said, I don't know how we finished second after doing all the dirty work chasing Todd's horse and, running greenly like we did. And he said, watch out for her when I put her on the grass.
And it's interesting because it was clear that racetrack was not as glib, or in terms of, giving it up to speed, because let's talk about Pletcher's other 3-year-old filly, because lost in a lot of the hubbub, I tweeted earlier this morning, Mike, was the performance of Anchor Down, debuting, missing the break a little bit. Todd's horses, interestingly, are not necessarily breaking like their usual bullet trains out of the gate, but Anchor Down very efficiently gets to the lead and starts to draw off. I thought this was a performance that went under the radar yesterday.
Yeah, it got a bigger figure than I thought. I saw you tweeted that he got a 90, and actually I just tweeted now that Cairo Prince had a 95 and Top Billing had a 90 for his effort. And, trust me, I'd rather have Top Billing's 90 and be sitting in that position now than with Anchor Down. But, like you said, he did miss the break, and it is odd that these horses are Todd's, these first timers, so many of them have not broken real well in the morning. But, he made up for it, sort of one going away. But, maybe it's just the competition. The other horses that were getting touted in their Hurricane Turn and Rachel's Quest didn't show up at all. Endowment Manager had scratched, so, he wound up beating a horse that had a 56 buyer in his last start and was off the board at in tune into Bow. So, the figure is the figure, and it was a good effort visually, but we'll see what happens when this horse steps up into allowance company and probably stretches out to 7/8 or a mile next time.
Well, and then you mentioned Top Billing. Let's go right to Top Billing and watch this performance again. We talked about it a little bit earlier. Give us your impressions and what you heard from Shug afterward.
Yeah, what can you say? It was a very impressive effort. Shug was beaming from ear to ear after this horse won. Joel took him back, I think, a little further than Shug had wanted to see him back there. He said he got a little bit nervous early when he was back so far, especially, when you're dealing with this kind of a racetrack that usually favors speed and a distance that also favors the speed because of the short stretch. But once he got into gear, he never stopped running. I mean, sometimes horses make those moves and flatten out, and he just kept coming and coming, one going away, did it 3-4 wide on the turn. Fast time, not as fast as Cairo Prince, but, he's not as experienced as Cairo Prince either. I think the sky's the limit here for Top Billing, and it'll be interesting to see, what kind of plan Shug has for this horse down the road. He's not going to rush him. He said that. I'm going to guess that it'll be a no for the Fountain of Youth, but, not rule it out completely, obviously. But I think he's going to try to coast around with this horse a little bit until he gets maybe at least one more good experience race before he really throws him in against the heavy heads. But I know Kieran McLaughlin, right after the immediately after the Holy Bull, when I was talking to him as he was heading down to the winner's circle, said, "I'm really glad Top Billing wasn't in the race today."
I got to ask you about a couple more spots as we wrap up. And Mike, another victory of sorts, even though Ms. Lee finishes third in that 9th race turf for maidens. Ms. Lee ran a huge race with all kinds of trouble at almost 9-1. And this was a horse that was getting all kinds of rave reviews out of the efforts up at Palm Meadows. Ms. Lee third in here, but you got to feel pretty good for Tom Bush, who has struggled over the past calendar year or so. Whispering wins here, and of course, whole lot of shaking. A pretty good second across state later in the day.
Yeah, Ms. Lee, also got good reports from Mike. I think he gave him a B, but if you read the reports, itself, and I urge people not just to look at the letter grade, but to read the reports, because he was probably wavering between a B and a B+ on him. And he ran a winning race, no doubt about it. He got off slow, got back in the pack, and then made a pretty good run once he finally got clear. I thought he had actually gotten second money, which could have been important with an objection sitting up there on the board like that. But the stewards made the right call in there, too, to leave the order as is, the way they finished. But it was an encouraging effort for Ms. Lee.
Got to ask you, Mike, too, before we close out. There were two performances to keep an eye on last night at Sam Houston that have Florida connections. How about Rose to Gold winning the Houston Ladies Classic, Sal Santoro and company, and Jesus Rios, and there was also, of course, all eyes on Force Freeze off the 2-year bowed tendon. Peter Walder, very upset this week to see him in an entry box. He ran actually okay. Give us your thoughts on what went on last night in Texas.
Well, I didn't see the races at all. I mean, I just, matter of fact, just noticed this morning for Mary Rampolini that of the results there. And, Rose to Gold, I thought maybe we'd seen her best days. And I'm, happy for the connections there to see this horse get back on the winning track. And, if they place her judiciously, I guess, as the season goes on, she should have another good campaign.
Absolutely, and we'll see how Force Freeze came out of it and see what happens with him. Mike, as always, appreciate it. Today's feature, the Swedish Chant. There's also a good maiden. You got a push today?
Well, it's an interesting race. The Swedish Chant. There's some horses in there that are coming off of troubled trips last time, like Hardley and Room Service. You got the Logical Ready to Act, who was a little bit of a disappointment, but did run greenly last time. Duff won, couldn't have been more impressive. And Party Now for Shug McGahee, who might be a little bit of a sleeper in here. The daughter of Tisnow was very impressive, winning her maiden last time. Galloped out extremely well. I think she's going to fly a little under the radar as far as the betting goes in there. But take a look if you get a chance at Hardley's last race and the trip this horse had. Making her way around the turn, trying to work her way through company while full of run, got steadied sharply, and then finished strong in that race. So she, too, may be worth a little look at a price in here.
Mike, we only got about 30 seconds left, but I was handicapping Gulfstream on the handicapping show earlier, and I had some questions. What's the story behind the jockey Kapyashev? I'm assuming these are brothers, both from Russia?
You know what? I really don't know much about them. I mean, the Dorochenko barn is bringing in, a lot of Russian talent, jockey talent, I guess, to ride, and I have not spoken to them. So if they keep placing horses the way they placed them yesterday, we won't have to worry about
it. Genius! The one and only Gennady Dorochenko, and Mike Welch, of course, from the Racing Form. Mike, thanks a lot.
Okay, guys, have a good one today.
We love it.
Very good.
He's the best.
All right, we'll take our last break. When we come back, John White of Santa Anita. Again, they got that huge carryover today, Cal Cup yesterday, that put a horse on the Derby Trail. We'll talk all of that right after this. I'm Seth Merrill. Join me weekdays at 10 for Racing Across America. We'll look at important races from around the country, get insight from top handicappers and analysts, and preview the upcoming week in racing. That's Racing Across America, weekdays at 10, right here on the OTB TV network.
I didn't want to get just any degree after high school.
Horse racing has always been my passion.
I was already a lawyer.
When I was young, my dad took me to the races. The sound of the crowd, I still remember.
I'm 40.
and I don't want to stay in a career I don't love.
I want to follow my passion.
Follow your passion at the University of Arizona Racetrack Industry Program.
Wagering at CapitalOTBBet.com is as easy as 1, 2, 3. 1. Capital Bet TV, the fastest and easiest online wagering experience where you can monitor 5 different tracks simultaneously. 2. Capital Bet Express. Its straightforward program layout and interactive handicapping information lets you build your wager quickly and efficiently. And 3. Capital Bet Pro, designed especially for the professional horse player. CapitalOTBBet.com. Log on today.
Fascinated by the world of horse racing? Interested in honing your handicapping skills? Class is in session. Night school, Monday nights. Easy to access online. It's free, interactive, and informative for the casual and serious race fan. Horse Player Now Buzz. Live horses to watch emailed to you daily. Our eyes, your prize. Night school in the buzz. Visit horseplayernow.com for details.
I'm Jeff Carl. Join me Saturdays and Sundays at 9 for the Handicappers Report. We'll handicap the top tracks across the country and help you prepare for the weekend in racing. That's the Handicappers Report, weekends at 9, only here on the OTB TV network.
We're back on Loose on the Lead on this busy Sunday morning. After a great Saturday of racing, the racing continues, particularly at the Great Race Place this afternoon, and it'll be the stage for a $431,000 double pick six carryover, authored by some big prices, and John White presides over all of it from the paddock. And here he is now from HRTV and from Santa Anita. John, good morning.
Good morning. Good morning.
John, we had a lot of interest in yesterday's action. We had a great Cal Cup that may put California Chrome and Art Sherman on the Derby trail. He wins the Cal Derby, gets an 88 buyer, looked great doing it.
He sure did. That was a very authoritative win, and it verified his most recent performance when he was also visually impressive. And you can also say that the fact that Tamburrando ran second, Tamurando's held his own. You know, he's been running against the likes of Shared Belief in races like the Grade 1 Cash Call Futurity, so he's been running an open company, and that helps give the possibility that California Chrome could maybe be a tough customer in open company.
Can't argue with that at all. And talking about open company, we should mention a little bit of an upset as Scherzinger for Jerry Hollendorfer wins the Grade 2 Santa Monica. Teddy's Promise, it was going to be her last start. If she had won, she'd leave the stage a millionairess, and it wasn't to be. Third in there for Teddy's Promise, and Jerry Hollendorfer, another weekend, another graded stake win. Mike Smith, another for him too.
Well, it wasn't the storybook ending that the Teddy's Promise connections were looking for. It seems like whenever she drew an inside post, things just often wouldn't work out for her. That turned out to be the case yesterday. That said, I thought there were two real Hall of Fame rides on yesterday's card. One was Mike Smith on Scherzinger. I mean, that's a masterpiece, because Scherzinger's in front early, drops back to third, re-rallies along the inside rail, and what made that masterful is Smith, when he got past, he didn't panic. He just sat there cool as a cucumber. I mean, it was just an unbelievable ride, what he did on that filly. Plus, the filly showed a lot of heart in pretty tight quarters along the inside at some point in the race. So that was as I said before the race, this could be a real up-and-comer in that division. And then the other ride that I thought was really a masterpiece was Cantasormo on Susan's Express, who was dismissed at 65-1. And I mean, DeSormo rode an absolutely beautiful race on this huge long shot to win, and that's part of the reason there's the big carryover today.
Absolutely, and I also want to mention the performance of Joe Talamo. How about the way he rates We Winnin'? I thought this was a terrific ride, because when you looked on paper, if there was going to be a horse that was going to contest the lead there in the Turf Classic, in the Cal Cup Turf Classic, somebody was going to go after Summer Hit, you had to think it was We Winnin'. Instead, sits chilly on Brian Coroner's trainee and then pounces mid-stretch and draws away. That was a tremendous performance.
Yes, it was, and as you point out, that was also an outstanding ride. And one thing that did hurt Summer Hit a little bit, Lucky Primo did put some pressure on him early, so that Summer Hit might have held on better if Lucky Primo hadn't been pretty much breathing down his neck early. But that was yet another one of the upsets that we had on a day that I predicted we might have some big payoffs, and that turned out to be the case.
Well, and John, in fact, we can turn the page right here and go into today's card and talk about what is another huge carryover. And for all the teeth gnashing and hand-wringing that people wanted to make about the field size and everything else in California, we've had one carryover after another over the last couple of weeks as the entry box starts to fill up, as the horses from Hollywood start to cycle in, and Rick Hammerly able to work a little bit more magic when it comes to putting these overnights together.
That's exactly right, and that was a big key to why I thought we would very possibly have another carryover into today. Was yesterday we had a lot of huge fields. I mean, we had some 14s yesterday, so, and this is no slam dunk pick six today by any stretch of the imagination. I mean, it's not impossible for this to carry over again into the Thursday card, which they've already drawn, and I've already been working on, just getting started on this morning. But my feeling is probably this will get hit. Yesterday I really felt there was almost no way the pick six was going to get hit. My feeling is there's going to be such massive tickets put in today that unless we get some real radical results, but that said, I mean, there are some races. I do not see a single in the sequence. And one reason I say that is one horse that I think a lot of people are going to be tempted to single is in the 7th race, number 1, Chilios. And I can understand people singling him. There's no question about it. I mean, this Distorted Humor colt ran a solid second in a fast race, 108.56. You get Gary Stevens back aboard. But the reason I say, from my standpoint, you can't single there is I think the 9 on the outside, Sawyer's Hill, you cannot, to me, leave that one off the ticket. This one has been working lights out in the morning, and you get Bejarano here, and this colt showed some ability last year at Del Mar, but these recent workouts on the dirt here at Santa Anita, and you're really playing with fire if you single Chilios and leave off Sawyer's Hill. And then you've got some first-time starters in there that are kind of dangerous, too. There's a Bapper first-time starter, a Ron Ellis first-time starter, another Bapper first-time starter. So, those are the type that could be, thwart everyone. And then there's our pretty boy Floyd, who's kind of perhaps going to get lost a little bit in the shuffle, and all he did was get left in his debut and come on and finish second to Bayern, who looked so good, that awfully wild colt trained by Baffert. So that's the type of situation where I'm talking about in the pick six today. Here's a race where a lot of people are going to single, and yet there's danger throughout that race to thwart the single.
Yeah, I think both of those Bafferts are very interesting. Obviously, Baffert with first-time starters, but there's some precociousness in the breeding as well. And speaking of that, in the race just before, a horse I really like on this card is in that 6th race, the number 12, Lamazone. By Lemon Drop kids, they're going to take to the turf, and I think you have some nature and nurture with that one as well.
Well, this 6th race that race is why I think we very possibly could, perhaps carry back over into Thursday, because this thing is an absolute migraine headache. I mean, you're coming down the hill on the turf, but with all these, there's some real well-meant first-time starters in there, such as number 11, Pragmatical. Again, the workout reports I'm getting, very, very positive there. And then you've got Bird and Love, the 7. This is a full sister to Bird Lover, who was a stakes winner at Santa Anita last year for the same owners and the same trainer here. And those are solid enough workouts. And you'll notice who's riding here, Bejarano. I mean, and then yours is the one type that I wouldn't even have on my ticket and won't have on my ticket, Lamazone, and yet would I be shocked if Lamazone won? Absolutely not. And you've got number 9, Diversey Harbor. I mean, here's a very, very intriguing Tom Proctor first-time starter with Stevens riding that could be really a threat in here.
John, a couple of notes on those races. I thought Divine Way was very much the horse to beat coming down the hill in that 6th. I agree about using both Sawyers Hill and Chelios. I'll make Dublin Up actually a C. And then in the Clocker's Corner, I think here's another one coming down the hill. Ready for More to me is the A, but I think this is a very good spot for Drill, who's working well as he always does, and it might be a pretty nifty spot. I love those turnbacks coming down the hill. I think he's a horse that could spring a little bit of a price upset. I'm going to use El Commodore and Boat Trip as C's in there.
Well, that Clocker's Corner is another pretty much migraine to me. I know a lot of people love Ready for More, and I can't blame him. I mean, he looked so terrific winning the other day. But that said, I mean, El Commodore just ran his heart out against Unbridled Note. That is good form down that hill in a Grade 3 race. Sweet Swap. I mean, this is a full brother to Sydney's Candy. He's 4 for 9. He's a multiple winner down the hill. He can run well fresh. Here's Bayerano again. Good work, Tab. I mean, this is another race, and I'll tell you another one in there that could be a real threat. And I might have made him too high on the morning line. It's hard to. I don't know what to do with Lakerville because I'll tell you what, he's got a world of talent. He's a full brother to Javrino, who won the Grade 2 Sir Beaufort here opening day. And I mean, look at his form. I mean, he's practically undefeated, and he can run well fresh. He's won down the hill. He's trained just strongly. I mean, this Lakerville could be tough today, and I can't get a feel for how he'll get bet. I mean, because he's been bet pretty good, but he's coming off a very long layoff. He hasn't run since the 2012 Del Mar meet. So will he get bet? Won't he get bet? I honestly don't know. So, I would have liked to have made him a little lower than 8, but like Ready for More, he might even get somewhat crushed in the betting today because, like I say, I know. And then we haven't even mentioned Boat Trip. And, I mean, believe me, this horse could win this
sure
race. He almost won the Hetty D. He didn't get beat far by Ms. Direction, the Queen of the Hill, in the Breeders' Cup, and then he won the Hollywood Turf Express. I mean, what's wrong with Boat Trip? He's getting back to what he does best, which is sprinting, coming off of a mile race against Regally Ready.
And John, finally, we've got to wrap up, but I do have to ask about the opening leg of this sequence because it's a mile on the grass. It's a conditional, optional claiming event, and it is absolutely a head-scratcher. You're going to have a couple of horses out front winging it, the American Act and Horizontally Speaking. I think Black Spirit is interesting for Dean Greenman, second start in North America with Mike Smith. I thought that was a glaring jock situation with Smith riding for Greenman. Then you look outside, there's Pure Loyalty and Imperative, and then of course Arctic North. I haven't even mentioned. This opener, depending on your budget, people could get wiped out here right off the bat.
Well, when you have to make the morning line so far in advance that we do today, unlike when it was made the morning of the races, when it was first begun, which is why it's called the morning line. If I were making the morning line this morning, which we used to do, I would have Black Spirit a lower price. I would have him 8 at the highest. So there's one, if I had a do-over, and it's not a huge difference. I mean, I've got him 12, but I think he might get some play with the switch to Mike Smith. And when I originally was looking at this race, I don't think I put enough into realizing this rider switch there. The other race, you call that a head-scratcher. Believe me, as far as I'm concerned, the final leg of the sequence is maybe even more of a head-scratcher because you got 12 $500 claimers and unwinners at 2. And believe me, anything could happen, I think, in that 9th race. I mean, really, anything.
John, anything can happen, and we saw it yesterday, of course, on Cal Cup Day. Terrific day of racing at Santa Anita, and now this big backdrop, a $431,000 double carryover. The NHC, of course, a few hours away in Vegas, and the action will be boiling down at Golden Gate and at Santa Anita, where they'll crown a champion there. Those races very important as part of the mandatories today. John, as always, we'll be watching you from the paddock, and we'll talk to you tomorrow morning on At the Races. Thanks as always.
Thanks a lot, guys. Have a great day.
John White, Steve Haskin, Mike Welsh, $500,000 almost in a double carryover. That means
carryover at Aqueduct as well.
A little carryover at Aqueduct, and Corey Bant could set everybody on their ear if he gets on the rail and just whistles at 57-1. I don't know. It could happen.
We'll be rooting for that. All right, we got to wrap things up for Loose on the Lead for this week. Don't forget questions, comments, suggestions. looseonthelead@yahoo.com or visit our Facebook page. We would love to hear from you. Seth Merrow, Steve Bick. We're in here every Sunday morning.
Steve Bick.
Did I point at
you?
You
pointed at me and said Seth Merrow. He's been talking on the radio. That's why
at the end of 2 hours.
Exactly. 2 straight hours on TV.
But we'll wrap things up. We're in here every Sunday morning at 10 a.m. So tune in again next Sunday morning for Loose on the Lead. We'll see you then.
You're watching OTB TV, a service of Capital Off Track Betting.